$1.3 trillion. I mean, that's a staggering amount of North American trade.
Oh, absolutely.
And right now, it's basically dangling by a thread over this rapidly approaching July 1st deadline. So welcome to today's deep dive.
Great to be here.
Today is June 17th, 2026, which means we are just, mere weeks away from the mandatory 6-year review of the USMCA.
Right, the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement.
Exactly. The deal that governs almost everything moving across our borders, from, cars and agriculture to energy and semiconductors.
It's massive.
It really is. And if you follow the news at all, you've likely seen this massive headline-making statement from Donald Trump this week, where he declared, and I quote, "The U.S. doesn't need anything from Canada or Mexico."
Yeah, that quote definitely made some waves.
Right. I mean, it's the kind of quote designed to make it sound like this entire economic engine is just on the verge of total collapse.
Well, the rhetoric is definitely engineered to create that sense of impending chaos.
Yeah.
But our objective today is to really strip away all that political theater.
Yeah, we're not here to panic over headlines.
Exactly. We are going to analyze this North American trade standoff through a completely unexpected lens. We are unpacking the mechanics of this situation using traditional Chinese strategic concepts.
Which is such a fascinating angle.
It really is. Specifically, we'll look at how these ancient frameworks of leverage and patience perfectly decode what is actually happening behind closed doors in Washington, Ottawa, and Mexico City.
Real quick, though, I want to explicitly state right here at the top for you listening in discussing these political figures, the quotes, international trade deals. Wait, I mean, in discussing all of this, we are not taking any political sides.
No, not at all.
Right. We aren't endorsing any specific viewpoints, left, right, or center. Our job is strictly analytical. We're just impartially applying the negotiation frameworks presented in today's source material to understand the underlying strategy.
We're basically just looking at the playbook.
Exactly. Just examining the mechanics.
Right, the architecture of high-stakes leverage. And to understand that architecture, we first really have to dismantle the illusion of the July 1st deadline itself.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the whole world seems fixated on this date as if it's like a cliff the three nations are about to fall off.
Yeah, that's the prevailing narrative.
Because the framing makes it sound like if the U.S., Mexico, and Canada fail to reach this sweeping agreement by midnight on July 1st, the deal just vanishes. Like tariffs instantly shoot up across the continent. So what actually happens mechanically if they don't sign a renewal?
Well, the deal does not die.
It doesn't.
No. And that is the crucial detail that gets completely omitted from the daily panic. The USMCA was structured with a mandatory joint review at the 6-year mark.
Right.
If all 3 countries agree right now, the deal is cleanly extended for another 16 years. But if they don't reach a consensus, which, let's be honest, is highly likely given the current climate, the agreement simply shifts into a phase of annual reviews. Yeah. The actual final sunset of the USMCA, the moment it would legitimately expire if absolutely nothing is done to save it, isn't until 2036.
Wait, really? 2036? So July 1st isn't a cliff at all?
Not even close.
It's more like it's like a lease renewal. If you don't sign a new 16-year lease with your landlord, you don't get evicted the next morning. You just roll into a month-to-month agreement.
That's a perfect analogy.
But I mean, rolling into a month-to-month lease fundamentally changes the power dynamic, right? Because now your rent could change at any time. It kind of forces you to constantly negotiate.
Exactly. It keeps everyone actively at the table, sweating the details year after year. The month-to-month lease keeps the pressure perpetually applied without actually burning down the building.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this perpetual pressure is central to the underlying strategy of the current U.S. administration. Because to understand why the rhetoric is so explosive when the actual deadline is so forgiving, the source material points us toward a recent geopolitical parallel.
Which one?
The U.S.-Iran standoff from just a few weeks ago.
Oh, man. That was a situation where the threat level felt completely apocalyptic.
Right. But it was designed to feel that way. The U.S. issued this highly dramatic 10 to 15-day ultimatum to Iran regarding their nuclear deal.
And the rhetoric from the administration suggested, immediate severe military consequences if they didn't comply.
Exactly. Global markets reacted, oil prices fluctuated, analysts were preparing for the total collapse of relations, yet the outcome wasn't war.
Right, it was a sudden ceasefire framework.
Yeah, back-channel negotiations opened up in Oman, and the critical Strait of Hormuz remained open to global shipping.
So the strategy there, which is detailed in the Art of the Deal, operates on this exact premise.
Yeah.
You maximize leverage before you even sit down at the table, By convincing the other side you're, like, entirely willing to drive the car off the cliff.
Yes, exactly. A threat is not a plan. The threat is the opening move.
To force the other side to grab the steering wheel and initiate the compromise.
You nailed it. And this distinctly American negotiating style actually mirrors a centuries-old Chinese strategic concept.
Okay, lay it on me.
It's called Liu Yu Yu.
Liu Yu Yu. What does that translate to?
It roughly translates to leave room in the road.
Leave room in the road. Okay, but wait. Explain how leaving room in the road squares with threatening to blow up $1 trillion trade deal. Because on the surface, those seem like total opposites.
I know, it sounds counterintuitive, but the core philosophy of Liu Yu Yu is that you never push a situation so hard or corner an opponent so tightly that you leave them absolutely no space to maneuver.
Oh, I see.
Because if you corner someone completely, they have no choice but to fight back destructively. So a highly skilled negotiator always leaves a door open, even when they're using public language that makes it sound like the door is being violently slammed shut and deadbolted.
Okay, so applying Liu Yu Yu to the USMCA means the threat itself is the tool, not the actual intent to leave.
Precisely.
So when Trump says the U.S. doesn't need anything from Canada or Mexico, he's projecting maximum pressure. But mechanically, by letting the July 1st deadline pass and triggering that annual review process, he's actually leaving the door unlatched.
Yes, he's slamming it for the cameras, but leaving room in the road for Canada and Mexico to walk through and offer concessions over the next year.
That is brilliant. He creates the crisis, but leaves just enough room for the other parties to offer the solution.
Exactly.
But let me push back on this for a second. If threatening to walk away is just a tactic to gain leverage, what's actually stopping the U.S. from really walking away?
That's the big question.
I mean, does the U.S. really need this deal?
Right.
Washington's economy is so massive and self-contained compared to its neighbors. Couldn't an administration argue that the short-term pain is worth it to gain long-term structural leverage? We have a $25 trillion domestic market.
It's a fair point, but the sheer size of the U.S. economy is somewhat deceptive when you look at how modern manufacturing actually operates. Well, the reality is that the cold economics do not care about political theater or domestic market size. What really prevents the U.S. from walking away is the brutal arithmetic of mutual dependency.
Mutual dependency.
Right. North American trade is not a scenario where the U.S. makes a finished product and simply sells it to Canada or Mexico. The supply chains are entirely fused.
Okay, let's trace how that fusion actually works. Because the source material goes deep into the automotive sector to illustrate this, and I think it's fascinating. We tend to think of a car as being built in one giant factory in Michigan.
Yeah, that's the old way of thinking. The modern automotive industry operates on a just-in-time manufacturing model.
Right.
Warehouses essentially don't exist anymore. The border itself is the warehouse. Take a single automotive wire harness.
Right.
The copper for that harness might be mined in Canada. Then it's shipped to the U.S. to be drawn into wire. Then it's sent down to Mexico because labor costs for hand assembling complex harnesses are lower there. And then finally, it's shipped back to an assembly plant in Ohio to actually be put into a finished vehicle.
Wow. So that single component crosses international borders 4 times before the car ever hits a dealership lot.
Exactly. 4 times.
But if USMCA actually collapses and tariffs revert to pre-agreement levels, you aren't just losing a market to sell cars, you are instantly taxing your own supply chain 4 separate times for a single part.
Yes. And that makes the Ohio-built car catastrophically expensive for the American consumer. The resulting drop in sales would halt assembly lines within days.
Oh, man. I mean, the disruption to U.S. manufacturing would just be profound.
Absolutely profound. And that dependency is just as existential for the partners. The sources note that 75% of all Canadian exports go directly to the United States.
75%.
Yeah.
But the natural question there is, why couldn't Canada just pivot? Like, if the U.S. is being a hostile trading partner, why not ship that 75% to Europe or to emerging markets in Asia?
Because you cannot simply put a freight train on a boat. I mean, the physical infrastructure of North America, the rail networks, the pipelines, the highways connecting over the Ambassador Bridge, it's all built to flow north and south.
That's a really good point.
Furthermore, the regulatory alignments from, food safety standards in agriculture to crash test ratings in vehicles, they are entirely synchronized between the U.S. and Canada. You cannot magically retool Canadian factories to meet European Union specifications overnight.
It would take years and billions of dollars.
Yeah.
And I imagine Mexico is bound by that exact same physical and regulatory gravity.
Completely. Mexico is deeply, deeply integrated into the North American automotive and electronic supply chains. Losing the U.S. consumer base would cost the Mexican economy enormously.
But losing access to Mexican manufacturing would simultaneously cripple American tech and auto companies trying to compete globally against Asian manufacturing.
Exactly. So this mutual dependency operates as the ultimate safety net. It guarantees that walking away just isn't a viable reality for any of the three nations. They are locked together.
Which sets up this incredibly strange dynamic. And here's where it gets really interesting for me.
Yeah.
If Canada and Mexico are so dependent on the U.S., and Washington is out there publicly threatening to upend the agreement, why are Ottawa and Mexico City so quiet?
It's a great observation.
I mean, we aren't seeing Canadian officials throwing wild counter tariffs around. We are seeing Mexican leaders escalating a war of words in the press. Why the silence?
Well, that silence is not accidental at all. It actually brings us to the second traditional Chinese concept from our sources.
Okay, what's this one?
Tao Guang Yang Hui.
Tao Guang Yang Hui. Okay, meaning
Hide your brightness, bide your time.
hide your brightness, bide your time. I love that.
It's powerful, right?
Yeah.
Or more practically, conceal your strengths and quietly endure until the moment is right.
Right. Because to a public that expects politicians to, constantly return fire in the press, Canada and Mexico's lack of a dramatic response, it looks like weakness. It looks like capitulation.
It looks like they are simply absorbing the blows.
But reacting emotionally to provocation is like a great way to surrender the initiative. If Mexico retaliates with premature tariffs, they give Washington the exact villain it needs to justify actually walking away from the table.
Exactly. By refusing to engage in the public spectacle, Canada and Mexico are executing a masterclass in strategic endurance. They are intentionally absorbing the rhetorical hits because they understand the golden rule of leverage.
Which is?
Whoever needs the deal more urgently is always in the weaker position. They are hiding their brightness, refusing to project panic, because they know the urgency isn't one-sided.
Right, because the American economy is feeling the friction too. The U.S. administration is facing its own domestic pressures, persistent inflation, supply chain bottlenecks, and an electorate that is highly sensitive to consumer price increases.
Exactly. Canada and Mexico are quietly, patiently waiting for the exact moment when the U.S. administration requires an economic or political victory for its own domestic audience. They know that the side capable of holding its nerve the longest, without reacting to the daily threats, is the side that ultimately shapes the final technical terms of the agreement. They're basically letting the U.S. exhaust its political capital against a wall of silence.
That is fascinating. So applying these two concepts together, you have Washington using Liu Yu maximizing pressure,
Right.
but leaving room in the road.
Yes.
And then you have Canada and Mexico countering with Tao Guang Hui, biding their time and waiting for the U.S. to need a win.
Exactly. It's a strategic dance.
So that completely reframes what we are going to see over the next few weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
what does this all mean for July 2nd, the day after this supposedly catastrophic deadline passes?
Well, if we follow the logic of these frameworks, July 2nd will be remarkably uneventful on the surface.
Really?
Yeah. There will be no grand, catastrophic collapse of North American trade. Tariffs will not instantly skyrocket. And conversely, there won't be a triumphant, confetti-filled signing ceremony extending the deal to 2042 either.
So what happens?
Instead, the three countries will simply quietly slip into the annual review mechanism.
The month-to-month lease.
The month-to-month lease. And as an instrument of diplomacy, this mechanism is highly effective. It's a feature, not a bug.
How so?
The annual review creates the structural space required for complex negotiations to continue over months or even years without forcing any leader to publicly concede defeat in the short term.
Right, because the U.S. administration doesn't have to announce a compromise, and Ottawa and Mexico City don't have to admit they caved to pressure.
Exactly. Everyone gets to save face publicly, while the actual gears of the negotiation keep turning privately.
So it highlights that there are basically two entirely different negotiations happening simultaneously.
That split reality is the absolute essence of high-stakes diplomacy.
You have the dramatic public performance filled with ultimatums and tough talk. And that theater is entirely meant for domestic voters. It's designed to play well on cable news in Texas, Toronto, and Guadalajara. But beneath that noise, completely insulated from the headlines, you have the actual highly technical deal-making happening between career trade negotiators who are debating the origin requirements of automotive steel or specific tariffs on dairy imports.
Exactly. The public performance creates the leverage. The private reality finalizes the contract. Confusing the two is where the panic begins.
Which is really the true value of today's deep dive for you listening. When you understand concepts like Liu Yu Yu leaving room and the road and Tao Guang Yang Hui biding your time, you literally change the way you consume information.
You really do.
You stop treating every dramatic headline or political statement as if it is the absolute final word on reality. You learn to look past the political performance and observe the actual strategy operating underneath.
And, it leads to a rather profound consideration about statecraft. Yeah, if the hyper-complex multi-trillion-dollar trade standoffs of the 21st century involving semiconductors, digital trade, modern automotive supply chains, if all of that can be so perfectly decoded using centuries-old Chinese proverbs, it raises a really fascinating question.
Which is?
Has the fundamental nature of human negotiation ever really evolved? Or are our modern political leaders, armed with instant global communication and massive data models, simply running the exact same ancient playbooks while wearing modern suits?
Man, that is a thought to mull over. The commodities change from, silk and spices to microchips and electric vehicles, but the human mind sitting at the negotiating table, calculating leverage and patience, it hasn't changed a bit.
Not one bit.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today to explore these sources. It's always a privilege to break these topics down with you.
Thanks for having me. It was a great conversation.
And for you listening, if you found this perspective helpful, or if you know someone who has been nervously watching the calendar and panicking about the July 1st USMCA deadline, share this deep dive with them. Help them see the strategy beneath the noise. We will catch you on the next one.